First of all, I've got to remind everyone that please note that this meeting will be recorded. Item number 1, minutes. You've all seen the minutes. Are you all happy with the true record of our last meeting? Is there any matters arising from it? Thank you. Apologies. Are there any apologies, Mr. Hayward?
Just one, Councillor Robert Reid.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Nobody indicating declarations of interest. Item number 4 is the Council's medium-term financial strategy 23-24 to 27-28 budget. The report of the Corporate Director, Finance and Resources. Over to you, Mr. Shakespeare.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, members. The report before you sets out the medium-term financial strategy, the MTFS, for the period of 2023 to 24 through to 2027-28. The projected revenue expenditure for 22-23, the revenue estimates for 23-24, and the capital programme for the period of 23-24 through to 27-28. You'll remember that Cabinet approved this budget to go out to consultation in early January. I can confirm that the consultation period has now ended with no further comments received. It is now proposed that the budget as presented to you today goes forward to full council approval 21st of February. Under section 32 of the Local Government Finance Act, the council has a legal obligation to set a balanced budget. The proposals before you apologies, members. The proposals before you present a balanced budget for a 3-year period through to 25-26. However, it should be noted that a balanced budget is achieved with the use of reserves. The local government finance settlement was announced on December the 19th, 2022, the relevant contents of which have been fully incorporated into this report. It is proposed that members make use of the flexibility to increase council tax by £5 and utilise 1.762 million of general fund reserves in the financial year 23-24. Informing the MTFS, members have been fully briefed and had opportunity to comment on budgeted assumptions. Cabinet members have been engaged and briefed by officers, and officers of the council with support from finance colleagues have been engaged. Taken together, the proposals presented show a balanced budget for a 3-year period to 25-26. Further savings, increased income or additional government funding will be necessary to ensure above minimum levels of reserves are maintained over the 5-year period. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shakespeare. Are there any questions to Mr. Shakespeare? Right then, the recommendations are that Cabinet recommend to Council 1 or A, members approve this report together with a draft medium-term financial strategy, MTFS, projected expenditure of 23-24 revenue estimates and capital programme for 23-24 and proposals for the 23-24 budget. B, Council pass a resolution in the form attached at Appendix 6, noting that this is in draft form only as Cabinet on the 14th of the 2nd, as we await further information from the precepting authorities. C, Council notes the report of the Chief Finance Officer on the robustness of the estimate and the accuracy of the Council's reserves attached to Appendix 7. And D, that the Leader of the Council be authorised to make any necessary amendments to include any late information on the correct and any errors or omissions. You all in agreement with that? Thank you. Now move on to item number 5, increased long-term leases. I'll now call on the Director of Infrastructure and Business Growth, Mrs. Annette Roberts.
Thank you, Chairman. So this report is the increased term for long leases, page 47 of the agenda pack. The Council currently owns buildings throughout the district which are leased on a commercial basis to businesses. Some of these leases are now coming towards the end of their terms, and this report details the recommendations of how to proceed with such leases, such lease renewals on new leases. The district councils are successors entitled to commercial leases with terms in excess of 5 years. The Landlord and Tenant Act provides security of tenure for tenants, giving them the right to renew existing leases. Effectively, the council is legally obliged to grant new leases to the tenants in excess of 5 years. The Constitution currently authorises the Corporate Director of Finance and Resource to authorise leases not exceeding 5 years and associated activities. The granting of leases to up to 10 years is commonplace and will allow for greater certainty, security of income and better security for the tenant, making the tenant being more attractive. The recommendation, therefore, is that the granting of new leases for terms in excess of 5 years to be delegated to the terms extended for 10 years. And the details of the recommendations are set out in the report. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mrs Roberts. Are there any questions to Mrs Roberts on this? The recommendations, has just been said, is that 2.1 that members agree for the granting of a renewal of the current leases and the granting of new leases for a term in excess of 5 years to be delegated under Part 3D 2.6 of the Constitution to the Corporate Director of Finance and Resources, and the term to be extended to 10 years. And 2, members delegate authority to the Director of Legal and Governance to execute all documentary necessary in this connection. Everyone in agreement with that? Thank you very much. We'll now go on to item number 6, proposed leases of community land and buildings. Over to you again, Mrs Roberts.
Thank you, Chairman. The proposed leases of common land and buildings, this is on page 51 of the agenda pack. So, similar to the previous report, the council owns land and buildings throughout the district which are leased to parish councils and other community groups. And that land tends to be used for recreational purposes, usually by local community sports clubs and not on a not-for-profit basis. The land is leased by us on a peppercorn rent for up to 99 years. A number of these leases are now coming to an end of their terms, and this report details on how to proceed with these lease renewals. As the leases are for long-term use, the new leases will contain terms to protect the council's long-term interests. The recommendation is that the members delegate the authority for granting renewal of current leases for community purposes for the Corporate Director for Finance and Resources, that the new leases will contain additional clauses to protect the council's interests, and that the Director of Legal and Governance execute all documents necessary in this connection. And the detailed recommendations are set out in para 2.1 of this report. Thank you, members. Thank you, Chairman. Happy to take any questions.
Questions to Mrs Roberts? You all happy to agree? The recommendations are to 2.1 that members delegate authority to the granting of renewals of the current leases and the granting of new leases for community purposes for terms in excess of 5 years at the peppercorn rent only, which is to be delegated under Part 302.6 of the Constitution to the Corporate Director of Finances. 2.2, members agree that any renewal of these leases at a peppercorn rent, minimal rent will contain additional clauses to protect the council's interest. Members delegate authority to the Director of Legal Services and Legal and Governance to execute all documentation necessary for this connection. You all in agreement? That concludes the meeting for today. Thank you all for attending. Thank you.